Ladies, let me tell you something most women don't want to hear, but they need to. A man does not speak when he is confused. A man speaks when he is clear. And the reason he hasn't told you how he feels yet is not because he doesn't have feeling. It's because you're making it too comfortable for him not to say anything. See, men are simple. We don't move until we have to. We don't decide until pressure shows up. And no, pressure doesn't mean arguments, crying, or long emotional speeches. Pressure means consequences, silence, space, standards. Men do not speak when they are comfortable. They speak when they are clear. That clarity does not come from endless conversations, repeated questions, or emotional explanation. A man can sit in comfort for months, even years, enjoying attention, affection, and companionship without ever feeling the need to define anything. Comfort makes him relax. And when a man relaxes too much, urgency disappears. He assumes time is on his side. He assumes you will stay. And when he assumes you will stay, there is no reason for him to explain his heart. Clarity is different. Clarity happens when a man understands exactly where he stands and what he stands to lose. It is the moment when things stop being vague, when the situation is no longer blurred by constant availability and emotional reassurance. His mind sharpens. He starts asking himself questions he was avoiding. What is this really? Do I want her in my future? Am I ready to step up? Or am I just passing time? Those questions do not come from comfort, they come from awareness. Many women believe that talking more will bring clarity. They think if they explain their feelings better, if they communicate more softly, more patiently, more lovingly, a man will finally open up. But what often happens is the opposite. The more you talk, the more space he has to stay silent. Your words fill the gaps, so he never has to. Your emotional labor does the work his honesty should be doing. Men are wired to respond to reality, not repeated discussions. When nothing changes around him, his behavior does not change either. If the relationship feels the same, whether he commits or not, then commitment becomes optional. And when something is optional, it gets delayed. That delay feels like confusion to you, but to him it feels like ease. Clarity comes when the environment shifts, when your energy changes, when you stop trying to manage his emotions and start respecting your own. When you are no longer over-explaining, over-giving, or overweighing, he notices something is different. That difference forces him to look inward. Silence from a woman who knows her worth is loud to a man who has been coasting. This is where clarity is born. Not from threats, not from drama, but from calm self-respect. When a man realizes that your presence is not guaranteed, his mind starts organizing his feelings. He separates attraction from intention. He begins to understand whether what he feels is temporary comfort or something deeper that requires action. A man who truly cares does not want to lose access to a woman who adds value to his life. Once that possibility becomes real, his emotions come into focus. He may not like the pressure, but pressure creates decisions, and decisions create honesty. This is why clarity brings words. Once he knows what he wants, he speaks, he defines, he claims, he steps forward. If he does not reach clarity, he stays quiet, not because he is cruel, but because uncertainty benefits him. Silence allows him to keep enjoying without committing. And as long as he feels safe in that space, there is no motivation to change it. Comfort protects indecision. Understanding this shifts everything. It stops you from taking his silence personally. It stops you from trying harder when the solution is actually to step back. It helps you realize that clarity is not something you can talk a man into. It is something he arrives at when circumstances require him to face. The truth of his intentions and the value of the woman in front of him, when he recognizes that staying silent may cost him something real and irreplaceable. When comfort fades and awareness begins to rise inside him, slowly pushing him toward the moment where words are no longer optional. Necessary. Too much availability feels like love, but it often creates the opposite effect. When a woman is always there, always responding, always making time no matter how she feels, a man slowly stops feeling the weight of her presence. Her consistency becomes predictable, and predictability turns emotional connection into background noise. He enjoys her energy, her care, her attention, but he does not feel the urgency to invest emotionally because nothing requires him to step forward. Availability without balance teaches him that access does not need effort. Emotional honesty grows when effort is required. When everything is easy, feelings remain undefined. A man can like you, care about you, even feel attached in a surface way, and still avoid expressing deeper emotions if he senses that the relationship will continue exactly the same without them. Too much availability removes the need for him to examine his feelings. It allows him to drift instead of decide, and drifting feels safe because it asks nothing from him. Many women confuse availability with loyalty. They believe showing up every time proves commitment. But commitment is not proven by how much you give. It is revealed by how someone responds when giving has limits. When you are always emotionally accessible, he never experiences the absence that creates reflection. He never has to ask himself what life feels like without you because you never let that space exist. Men process emotions through contrast. They understand value when something is no longer constantly present. This does not mean disappearing or playing games. It means allowing natural space. When your time, energy, and attention are not endlessly available, a man becomes more aware of what he receives from you. He starts to feel the gap when you are not filling every moment. That gap triggers attachment because attachment grows in the space between connection and distance. When you respond instantly, adjust your schedule, and prioritize his needs above your own, you unintentionally send a message that your life revolves around him. That message makes him comfortable but not emotionally invested. He does not feel challenged to rise because everything is already arranged for his convenience. Emotional honesty requires effort, and effort is born from the desire to keep something valuable. A man becomes attached when he feels that he has earned his place in your life, not when it is handed to him freely. When availability is unlimited, appreciation weakens. He may still enjoy you deeply, but enjoyment is not attachment. Attachment is rooted in intention. And intention forms when a man senses that your presence is meaningful, not guaranteed. As availability decreases, awareness increases. He starts noticing how your energy affects him. He begins to miss the way you listen, the way you laugh, the way you bring peace into his world. Those realizations push him toward emotional clarity. He starts asking himself whether he is willing to step up to keep that connection alive. This is why stepping back often feels powerful. Not because it manipulates, but because it restores balance. You stop overextending and he starts leaning in. You stop carrying the emotional weight and he begins to feel it. That shift creates the conditions for honesty. A man who feels the possibility of losing access becomes more willing to express what he truly feels. When availability is balanced, attraction deepens naturally. He is no longer just receiving, he is participating. Emotional attachment grows in that participation. He speaks because he wants to secure what he values. He opens up because silence no longer feels safe. And if he does not respond, that absence of effort reveals his true level of emotion. Investment, saving you from waiting in a space where honesty was never going to arrive. Silence and standards create real pressure because they remove confusion and replace it with clarity. Loud reactions, repeated explanations, and emotional bargaining rarely move a man toward truth. They give him noise to hide behind. Silence on the other hand, removes that shelter. When words stop, excuses lose their power. When standards are visible and firm, he can no longer pretend he doesn't understand what is required. Pressure is not created by confrontation, it is created by certainty. Silence is not punishment. It is presence without pleading. It is the calm decision to stop over-communicating feelings that have already been shown through action. When a woman goes quiet in a grounded way, not cold or angry, it forces a man to listen to his own thoughts. He becomes aware of the space she used to fill. He feels the absence of reassurance, and that absence makes him question where he stands. Silence does not chase answers, it invites them. Standards are what give silence meaning. Without standards, silence looks like withdrawal. With standards, silence becomes a boundary. A man senses the difference immediately. He can feel when a woman is no longer waiting endlessly, no longer negotiating her needs, no longer lowering expectations to keep peace. Standards tell him that access has conditions, not harsh conditions, but clear ones. Respect, effort, consistency, honesty. When those standards exist, silence communicates more than words ever could. Pressure appears when a man realizes that the situation is no longer flexible. He understands that drifting will cost him something. Standards turn uncertainty into a decision point. He must either rise to meet them or step aside. That moment creates internal pressure because it removes comfort. Comfort allows delay. Standards remove delay. Silence ensures he cannot rely on emotional cushioning to avoid the truth. Many women fear silence because they think it will push a man away. In reality, it pushes him inward. It forces reflection. It removes the emotional safety net that allowed him to take without giving. When a woman stops explaining why she deserves more and simply requires it, the dynamic shifts. He no longer hears requests. He sees expectations. And expectations demand a response. Pressure is not control, it is consequence. A man feels pressure when he understands that his actions determine access to something he values. Silence highlights that access is no longer automatic. Standards clarify what is needed to keep it. Together, they create a situation where honesty becomes necessary. He cannot remain vague when the environment no longer supports vagueness. This is where many men finally speak, not because they are forced, but because the cost of silence increases. When a woman maintains her standards calmly, without chasing or threatening, she shows emotional strength. That strength commands respect. A man may resist at first, testing whether the standards are real. Silence holds steady during that test. It does not react. It does not bend. And that consistency creates pressure that cannot be ignored. If his feelings are real, pressure sharpens them. It pushes him to define his intentions. It encourages him to step forward with clarity. If his feelings are shallow, pressure exposes that too. Silence and standards do not create outcomes. They reveal them. They remove illusion and replace it with truth. A woman who understands this stops fearing quiet moments. She stops filling space with explanations. She allows standards to speak. In that environment, a man is left with a simple choice. Step up or step away. Speak or lose access. Decide or drift alone. And in that moment, the pressure he feels is not coming from her words, but from the reality that silence and standards have quietly created around him, leaving no room to hide from what he truly wants or what he is unwilling to give. Fear of loss is one of the strongest forces that brings truth to the surface because it removes the illusion of endless time. When a man believes he can stay exactly where he is without consequences, honesty feels unnecessary. He can delay, avoid, and stay emotionally vague because nothing is at risk. But the moment he senses that something valuable could slip away, his priorities shift. What once felt optional suddenly feels urgent. What he avoided thinking about now demands attention. Loss creates clarity because it activates responsibility. A man may enjoy affection, attention, and emotional support without fully acknowledging what it means to him. As long as it feels permanent, he does not examine it deeply. But when the possibility of losing that connection becomes real, his mind starts sorting feelings from convenience. He begins to ask himself questions he was comfortable ignoring. Do I truly want her in my life? Am I willing to show up fully? Is this something I can afford to lose? Fear of loss does not mean jealousy or manipulation. It is not about threatening or testing. It is about the natural consequence of a woman no longer placing her life on hold. When her energy shifts, when her focus turns inward, when her availability is no longer guaranteed, the environment changes. He feels the difference. He notices the space where her presence used to be consistent. That space speaks louder than any emotional conversation. Men often avoid truth because truth requires action. Saying how he feels means he must either commit or step away. Both require courage. Avoiding the truth allows him to stay comfortable. But fear of loss removes that comfort. It tells him that staying silent has a cost. It confronts him with the reality that inaction is also a decision, and that decision may lead to losing someone who added value to his life. When a man feels that loss is possible, emotional honesty becomes self-protection. He speaks not because he is pressured by words, but because he is motivated by desire. He does not want to look back and realize he let something meaningful disappear simply because he was afraid to be clear. Fear of loss turns emotion into urgency, transforms vague feelings into defined intentions. This is why emotional truth often comes after distance, not during closeness. When everything feels secure, honesty can wait. When security is uncertain, honesty becomes necessary. A man starts paying attention to his own behavior. He notices whether he misses her voice, her presence, her energy. Those realizations sharpen his emotion. He understands what she contributes to his life, and that understanding pushes him toward truth. Fear of loss also strips away games. Pretending becomes exhausting when the stakes are high. If his feelings are shallow, fear of loss will not suddenly create depth. Instead, it will expose hesitation and inconsistency. But if his feelings are real, fear of loss brings courage. It gives him a reason to speak clearly, to define the relationship, to take responsibility for his emotions. A woman does not need to create fear. She only needs to stop cushioning his comfort. When she chooses herself, when she no longer chases reassurance, when she allows life to move forward without waiting, fear of loss naturally appears. It is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is the realization that access to her is not unlimited. This kind of fear is healthy. It leads to honesty instead of avoidance. It encourages truth instead of silence. It shows a man that feelings cannot remain hidden forever without consequence. In that space, words finally come out. Not because he was pushed, but because the possibility of losing something real made staying silent more painful than being honest, forcing him to confront his emotions and decide whether he is willing to fight for connection or walk away knowing he chose comfort over truth as self-value. Woman does not chase emotions because she understands that emotions given under pressure are not real gifts. They are responses to fear. Chasing turns feelings into something forced, something negotiated, something extracted instead of offered. When a woman knows her worth, she does not beg a man to explain himself, define the relationship, or reassure her repeatedly. She knows that genuine emotion flows naturally toward what is respected, not toward what is pursued relentlessly. Chasing emotions puts a woman in a position of imbalance. It subtly tells a man that her peace depends on his words, that her confidence rises and falls with his attention. Even if he cares, this dynamic weakens attraction. A man may respond temporarily, offering just enough words to calm the situation. But those words are often empty. They are not rooted in intention, only in relief. A self-valued woman refuses to live on emotional crumbs because she understands that consistency matters more than promises. When a woman stops chasing, something powerful happens. She shifts the responsibility back to where it belongs. Instead of carrying the emotional labor of the connection alone, she allows the man to meet her at her level or reveal that he cannot. This is not emotional coldness. It is emotional maturity. She still feels deeply, but she no longer overextends to prove her worth or secure validation. A woman who values herself trusts that if a man truly feels something, he will express it without being dragged into honesty. She understands that emotions worth having do not need to be hunted down. They show up willingly. They grow through shared effort, not through constant reassurance. By refusing to chase, she protects her dignity and her emotional energy. Men respond differently to women who do not chase. They sense strength. They feel the difference between a woman who needs an answer and a woman who simply expects clarity. One asks from fear, the other stands in confidence. That confidence creates space. And in that space, a man must either step forward or fall behind. He cannot stay in emotional limbo forever when no one is pulling him along. A self-valued woman also understands that chasing emotions often delays truth. When she keeps asking how he feels, she gives him room to avoid answering honestly. Her questions soften the consequences of his silence. But when she stops asking, silence becomes louder. It forces him to confront his own indecision. He can no longer hide behind her patience. This kind of woman does not confuse effort with love. She knows that love is shown in actions, in consistency, in the willingness to show up even when it is uncomfortable. She watches behavior more than words. And because she is not chasing, she sees clearly. She notices whether he initiates, whether he invests, whether he chooses her without reminders. Chasing emotions often comes from fear of loss. A self-valued woman has already made peace with loss. She knows that losing someone who cannot meet her emotionally is not a failure, it is protection. That understanding frees her from desperation. It allows her to remain open without being attached to outcomes that require her to shrink. When a woman stands firmly in her worth, she becomes emotionally magnetic, not because she is distant, but because she is grounded. A man feels that being with her is a choice, not an obligation she will beg him to make. That awareness invites honesty. He speaks because he wants to be part of her life, not because she demanded explanation. If he does not speak, she listens to that silence without panic. She does not chase it, fix it, or fill it. She accepts it as information. And in doing so, she keeps her power intact, her heart protected, and her standard clear, allowing only emotions that arrive freely and fully to remain. In her life, while anything that requires pursuit quietly fades away, she continues moving forward without slowing down to convince someone to feel what they are not ready or willing to give. His response reveals his true intentions because actions and reactions expose what words often try to hide. When a man is faced with clarity, boundaries, or a shift in your energy, how he responds tells you far more than anything he could say in a comfortable conversation. Intentions are not proven during easy moments. They are revealed when effort is required. Anyone can stay when nothing is expected of them. Character shows up when expectations appear. A man who truly wants you does not become confused when things get real. He may feel challenged, but he will not disappear. He may need time to think, but he will not leave you guessing forever. His response will show movement, direction, and consideration. He will try to understand where he stands because your presence matters to him. That effort is intention in action. On the other hand, when a man avoids, delays, deflects, or grows distant, as soon as clarity is needed, that behavior is also an answer. Silence after a boundary is not confusion. It is information. Mixed signals after standards are set are not misunderstandings. They are choices. A man who wants to keep you in his life will not risk losing you over comfort. A man who is unsure will protect his ease instead of the connection. Many women struggle here because they focus on potential instead of patterns. They listen to promises instead of watching responses. But intentions do not live in future talk, they live in present behavior. When you stop chasing and start observing, the truth becomes clear. Does he lean in or pull away? Does he rise to meet you or hope you lower yourself? Those reactions are honest even when words are not. A man's response also shows emotional maturity. A mature man may not always get it right immediately, but he will take responsibility. He will communicate. He will try to align his actions with his feelings. An emotionally unavailable man will resist, withdraw, or blame circumstances. He may accuse you of changing, being difficult, or asking for too much. That response reveals not only his intentions toward you, but his capacity for a healthy relationship. When a woman holds her standards calmly, she creates a mirror. A man sees himself clearly in that mirror. He sees whether he is ready to show up or not. And how he reacts to that reflection tells the story. A man who values you will respect your boundaries even if they challenge him. A man who only enjoys access will resent them. This is why paying attention to response saves time and emotional energy. It removes the need to decode words or overanalyze behavior. You do not have to guess how he feels when you watch what he does. When things are no longer easy, his response shows whether he sees you as an option or a priority. Sometimes the truth hurts, but clarity is kinder than confusion. When a man's response shows hesitation, avoidance, or indifference, it is not a sign to try harder. It is a sign to listen. His behavior is telling you what he is willing to give and what he is not. Accepting that truth protects your peace. A woman who understands this stops forcing outcomes. She allows responses to speak. She stops explaining her worth and starts honoring it. And in doing so, she naturally aligns with someone whose response is consistent, intentional, and emotionally available. Because in the end, the way a man responds when it matters most is the clearest expression of how he truly feels and what he genuinely intends to offer in a relationship.